But this is a free music.
Okay, are you ready? Let's go.
Hey guys, this is Bashak. We are here.
Hi, this is Kate. Here we are.
Hey, Kate, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Interesting week for me.
Tell me.
We are talking about death today with our guest, and
Mhm.
my aunt died this week and Monday, and
No.
I went to the funeral on Tuesday. In Turkey, they do these things very fast. She passed away on Monday. We went to funeral, and this is the first time I've actually been in a funeral of a loved one. And she was my favorite person in my family, oldest one. And first time I've been in the graveyard and really seen the process.
Yeah.
And it was, I have to say, it was so beautiful in the sense that this is the first time I thought of death as something beautiful rather than something painful. I mean, it's a combination of both, of course. But I think we'll all get to that with
Yes, we'll
our,
get to that. Yes, with
yeah.
our guests, which, yes, okay, so let's get straight to that. Let's bring in the wonderful, dynamic, beautiful ballerina or renegade ballerina. We'll get to that. Sally Rousse. Sally, are you there? Can you join us?
Oh, this is my,
Oh, yes, turn your camera on.
where is it?
I don't
Oops,
know.
sorry, it's doing
That's
something
all right.
strange. Sorry, I moved things around.
That's okay. Let's see. Turn. It's not usually at the bottom.
Hi.
Yay! There you are. Welcome.
Hi.
I'm
Thanks for
sorry to hear,
joining.
Bashak, about your aunt, but we'll get into that.
Thank you.
All right. So let me just read for our listeners Sally's shortened bio here. So, Sally performs, teaches, choreographs, curates, writes, and advocates dance. She is a recent Dance MFA Fellow and graduate of Bennington College, Vermont and Montpellier, France, and is a two-time recipient of the McKnight Fellowship for Dancers, a SAGE awardee for Best Performer, was named Artist of the Year by the Minneapolis City Pages, and, don't forget, is the mother of two young adults. Born in Vermont, Bruce performed as a leading dancer with Ballet Chicago, the Royal Ballet of Flanders, and the James Sewell Ballet, the company she co-founded in New York City and brought to Minnesota. She has danced many roles in the classical and Balanchine repertoires and has had more than 100 new works created on her by contemporary choreographers, branding her the renegade ballerina. Rousse's site-specific works have taken dance off the traditional stage into venues such as the Kwan Tung Pier in Hong Kong and commercial venues such as the Guthrie, Southern and State Theaters, the Walker Art Center, Mass MoCA, the Cartoon Channel, and Harvard's ART, the American Repertory Theater. Amazing, Sally. And there's more, but that's all we have time to read. Welcome.
You know, as
Well,
you are reading, Kate, I find myself getting more and more straighter.
I know.
I
Is my
know, I feel the
posture.
same.
I know. We need to stand up and
I know.
accept and receive or protect.
Hi,
So much
So,
Sally.
laughing.
so so Sally and I reconnected, and she was talking to me about her MFA thesis, dance thesis, and it's the result of which was this book called Pushing Up Daisies. And so Sally, I started thinking, what an interesting topic, first of all, death, for a dancer, for an MFA. And that's why we wanted to talk to you about this. So maybe
Yeah.
you could just start by telling us how you chose this topic and yes, what led you to this.
Yeah. Um, I I think it chose me. I mean, I was, you have to sort of think what you're busy with. What have you been busy with? And I didn't quite realize that this is my calling. I see dance my whole life as aliveness, and so death as sort of a pretty significant part of my life. I've had a lot of, I mean, many of us have at this age, we've experienced a lot of death, but I think, I think you know, it's a very huge topic, and I'm not an expert, and I think it's absurd. You know, like my thesis is about death and aliveness, and um, and you know, it's just kind of it's kind of overwhelming. But I'm still busy with it. I'm still researching it, and I think that it. A lot of people said to me, "Well, you've always been busy with this. You've always been into this." And I was like, "How so?" And they reminded me that at my 50th birthday, I had a big gala situation here in Minneapolis. I was leaving the company, Jamesville Ballet, and turning 50. And I decided to stage it as a funeral or a memorial and like a roast also. Um, and um, it's a performance, you know, memorials and these things, this
It is.
funeral that you just went to, Basha. It's a ritual, it's a performance. Um, I'm a performer. It's an event, and it's interesting to me. And it was a celebration. Of course, it was all staged and written, and the eulogies and people presenting, and then how it twisted and turned into a roast. And um, humor, of course, made its way into it because I love comedy. Um, and I think that I was thinking, oh yeah, there's that. There is that. I do remember, um, you know, when my father died, I was very young. I was four and a half, and I wasn't allowed to go to the funeral. And when my family got back, I said, "What was it like?" And they said, "Oh, it's, you know, sort of like they have a box with the body and they go around and say nice things about the person." And so then I started concocting these games like with my little friends. Okay, you lay down and I'll say nice things about you. Okay, my turn. I'll lay down. Go. And then, you know,
It's
what
an
people
amazing
said,
game. That's
it's
an
an amazing,
amazing
let's
game.
play funeral.
Yes, it's like a
And
therapy, though. You were creating therapy for yourself, I have to say, don't you think?
it was, and it was
Yeah.
also yeah, but it was so far back that it really, it wasn't like, I can't wait to, you know, to answer your question of how this came about as my thesis,
Yeah.
it wasn't like, oh yeah, I just, I was really into memorializing and ending, like putting an end to something, whether it's a marriage or a company or a job or an actual death. I'm really concerned with that. And now, um, not that I look forward to it or think it's, you know, happy fun. Um, I get really ignited by the research I've done and these conversations that I've facilitated. My cat's about to attack the computer. And and yeah, we can talk more about that, but
Yeah.
that was the
Yeah.
genesis for the thesis. Yeah.
So, I'm just curious, how is your perspective on that evolved through your life based on your personal experiences?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously evolved from childhood to now. I think it's a very significant sort of flag that was planted in my brain when my father died was like, oh, okay, I remember this distinctly. I have to remember things now. Now I have to, you know, from this point forward, it's like a timeline emerged. And I just know that I thought, mm, as a 4.5-year-old, I was like, I have to remember things now. I don't know why. And then
Amazing. It's
people were
amazing,
like,
Sally.
oh, you don't really remember. You know, people would ask even a year later, you were so young, you probably don't even remember. And I was like, yes, I do. And I had maybe 2 or 3 memories really, but I keep saying them because I remember them. But it
Yes.
triggered a memory of even like babyhood. Like I can remember hearing things in the crib, you know, like, so it was very significant for me as a marker of time, of memory. And then I think it evolved with people I really knew as I got older, people who died during the AIDS crisis when I mean, we were both, you
Yeah.
know, 1920 to 25 in New York area. Just a tremendous amount of beloveds dying. And then my husband dying. I had a husband, David Munchin, who got ill suddenly and of a vicious brain tumor. And that was when we were both 22, and then he died when we were 24. So that widowhood at such a young age was very impactful. And, you know, then we get into grief and how one deals with grief, which is not my expertise. I am not an expert on grief. And I certainly ran away from that for several years and then finally kind of settled in and grieved. But and then death, I guess, evolved to I guess maybe more other people caught up with how many deaths they, you know, as you get older, more you're used, you know, so then it kind of now I'm it's now it's not like I'm so unusual.
Yeah.
Now many of us have had parents or grandparents or, you know, even friends who have died. So I feel not so alone. I feel like I'm doing this journey with other people now. And but I'm bringing with it all this experience, weirdness, right or wrong, doesn't matter. It's just a different experience. And
I love that you said that because it is very personal, right? It's
yes,
your personal experience that you can only share from that authentically, right? And but it's interesting. I know, Kate, you have a question to ask, but just it's
Go ahead.
coming to
No,
me.
go ahead.
Like you mentioned that you actually shied away from the grief aspect for a while. How do you think discussions about death can help people cope with grief?
yeah, I mean, that was one of my leading questions in my thesis and continues to be like, how can we talk about death without it being dark and morbid and and how do I remember somebody I haven't even met, like my grandfather? You know, I never even met him, and then I just dug into that this past 2 years. And I think when I was young, maybe all of you, I don't know, um, it was hush hush. People were like, you know, even superstitious. Oh, you know, old people even still today don't want to talk about it. It might
Right.
hasten death,
Yes,
right?
don't talk about it.
And
Yes.
I think fortunately, I think that we're in an era where that is changing. I think that it is because we know that it is 100% going to happen to all of us. It is the 100 one thing that is for sure, right?
We all share. Yes.
We all share.
Right.
And you know, every one of the sort of death aliveness cafes I've facilitated have been different. And I sort of read the room and people come with different experiences. There are people who show up who are dying or are battling
Facing
something.
death. Yeah,
Yes,
facing death
facing death.
closer. Yes. Yeah.
People who have just, you know, done that. One person who came is a communications director. In fact, she just managed the situation that happened in Minnesota with the murder of the senator and her husband. And, you know, having to spin the story. That's her job. That was amazing. So, but this, you know, I met with her a year ago. It wasn't like I just met with her about that. But and I think that talking about it and trying to, for me, the challenge is trying to create a gathering of space where people can talk freely about it. It's very vulnerable. It's very personal. It's very emotional for some people. Um, it can be have lightness and you know we we took a stab at writing our own eulogies or obituaries, or some people wrote their own just epigraphs on the gravestone that um very brief little statements. And then we did play funeral. We did like, I'll
Amazing.
lie down and you read my obituary that I wrote or my
I just
eulogy that I
love
wrote.
that.
And
I,
you know, my, you know, it's some people were really like, oh, I'm excited to do this. And then, um, some people, it's just, they've just lost somebody and they're still
Yeah.
writing obituary. I can remember somebody going, I'm actually going to go home and tweak the one that I was writing for my spouse. Or so it's very interesting. And we don't have control over when we die, but we have control over these elements of how we are. Hmm, maybe what happens to our body. There are more choices today than there were when I was little.
Yeah.
We have green burial. We have terra. Oh, what is it when it's human composting? Terra something.
I don't know what it's called. I don't know what it's called.
It's very interesting. It's where you become soil,
Yeah.
and you can, instead of
We all end up becoming, yeah, Earth, right? It's amazing.
yeah, but it doesn't put smoke in the air. It doesn't put CO2 gases into the air. So
Uh,
um well, I'm not really a scientist, right? So I don't have to
Neither do we.
terra
no,
something,
no. But in India, how they burn the bodies,
right?
yeah. So they do, and that's sort of an
Fire.
yeah, exactly. And I think our culture,
Purification aspect, right?
what?
There's a purification aspect with fire.
Exactly, yes. And there's more confronting the whole process of death when that happens versus sort of covering something up and putting it in the ground. So that's,
Mhm.
but anyway, I'm sort of digressing. And I actually wanted to keep the conversation more in the present here with you, but I just wanted to get back a little bit because when I first met you, we were teenagers. I have to say that the thing about you that I mean, there's lots of things I remember, but one thing is that you were so focused, and you were so focused on what you were doing, and it really stood out, because when you're teenagers, everyone sort of, and I was like, you knew what you wanted to do so clearly. I mean, maybe you didn't think you did, but from the
Oh,
outside,
yeah.
yeah, you did, right? And is
Yeah,
that
well, for dance, you have to.
yes, yes, you have to.
Yeah.
But so did that all, but did your father's early death and this thing of remembering all that sort of focus you on that path? Or how do you think, how did you choose dance? How did dance choose you?
Yeah, I think it chose me. I think I just was going along, and then a fr a friend in second grade said, "Oh, I can't stay afterwards because I'm going to ballet class." And I was like, "I forgot I have to take ballet. That's what I should be doing." I literally was like, "Oh,"
Wow.
and I
It's
went
a
home and I was
remembrance
like,
for you.
"I
Yeah.
have to take ballet." And it was just a very weird thing. And I was, 2 months late or something like that, and end of October or something, and I just jumped in. But yeah, it was like I was supposed to do it, and it was like someone tapping you on the shoulder saying, "Don't forget, you're supposed to be doing this." And
Incredible. That's like a
I'm not
dharma.
made for this. I mean, I come from a large family of 7 kids. There's not a lot of resources, and nobody danced, and it's not like the typical background for a ballet dancer. But I was really focused at St. Paul's because I was kind of recruited. You're not supposed to recruit, but I was kind of recruited because they were trying to build a dance program,
Yeah.
and they needed dancers who were proficient, but who also could handle the academics. And I sort of knew I was only going to stay for a couple of years anyway. I graduated early, so I came a year late and graduated a year early. So I had to smash 4 years into two, and I didn't have a lot of extra time. But yeah, it's funny. I was very like beelined.
Yes.
No boyfriends, no drugs, no.
No, 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 good. Dance. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's in your book, Pushing Up Daisies, you said that you've always danced with death. So, how do you think this closeness to death has affected your choices in life then? Is it part of that, like choosing dance or dance choosing you, or being really disciplined in life about purposeful about what you do in life? Do you think that is part of having this closeness with death?
I think partly it's a literary thing of like the dance with death, but also, yeah, I've danced with death since the beginning. You know, I grew up in a town, Barry, Vermont, spelled bar, which but it's Barry. And it's, the very town itself is, it's full, you know, it was a ton of Italians who left and came in, they're sculptors, you know, they're wood stone workers. And my grandfather was one of them. I'm talking 400,000 Italians left in the, you know, early part of the 20th century and pre-World War One, during World War One, you
Okay.
know, this period.
Yes. Okay.
And many settled in Barry because of the granite quarries and the stone trade. They had no experience with that. Anyway, it's a different, they carve marble, but anyway, the granite that's used for monuments or gravestones
Yeah.
is what my grandfather carved, and he actually died from it before I was even born. He worked in the quarry for carving the granite for 40 years.
Wow.
And it was before OSHA and protections and workplace protections. And then my sister worked in a granite shed in the offices, you know, bookkeeping and selling these monuments, right?
Wow.
So, and then the cemetery that we had is one of the most beautiful cemeteries in the world. Hope Cemetery, you should go to visit it.
I've seen the
It's
pictures in your book.
gorgeous,
Incredible.
right? Oh,
Yeah.
they're just, I'm so spoiled, right? These Italians made their own stones, their monuments before they died. They're
Yeah.
so, you know, and they're artists and they're
Beautiful.
gorgeous. And um, when I've gone to other um cemeteries, I'm like, well, they're, you know, they're nice, but they're not like expressive like these. And I didn't realize that this was such a unique. So and we always went to visit my grandfather, my grandmother eventually, and my father in the cemetery. My uncle had a monument, the one with the olive. They're not olive. Yeah, they are olives.
Yeah.
They look like a
Yeah.
frog.
And then you did your olive face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Frog face.
Frog face, excuse
And
me, frog face.
you know, people just prepared for death. They had already bought them, and I could visit my friend who started me in ballet. I could visit her family mausoleum, or there's a
Yeah.
big structure, and they buy it before they're even gone. So it's kind of a death culture there. A lot of nursing homes too, by the way, strangely. Anyway, so and I think that I don't know if yeah, it was not a conscious choice. Like, I am here, look at this, and you know, this is all put into context only in the past couple of years.
Yeah. But it's fascinating that it is.
Oh, I grew up
That,
like this.
yeah, that all these parts of the puzzle sort of coming together to create this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's really pretty
But
fascinating.
it's so beautiful that, we are so focused in our lives to be alive, to hold on to that aliveness. No one wants to think about death, but that is part of it. And you have been like, you grew up in this kind of a culture, and this is something in the forefront in your mind. People making their own tombstones, like all of this is just fascinating, isn't it?
Mhm.
Right. It's really
Conscious.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I was just thinking about one of them, their nose got cut off, and I don't know. Anyway, I think dancers in particular, you know, you were asking how does that relate to dance and a career choice. You know, as I said, wasn't a conscious choice like this plus this, therefore I'm going to be a dancer, and I know all about that. I know I don't know about those choices really. But I know that dancers have a certain relationship to mortality because their careers are so short,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
an athlete. And I think I mean, I'm kind of interested in figuring out different categories of attitudes around death. That's sort of the future stuff, like maybe gender. How do how do different people yeah, what are their attitudes about death?
Even
What are the
different cultures, right?
yeah, different cultures certainly have different attitudes, but maybe different, and certainly you brought up different ages, you know, your changes. but maybe gender attitudes. I have a couple of friends who are like, oh, men cannot deal with death. And I'm like, really interesting. Let me look into that. Oh yeah, because we can't reproduce, so we have a real hard time with death. And that's just one man. So I can't, I'm just beginning to look into this. I don't really know. But it just never occurred to me that there would be a gender bias about death.
Yeah.
Right. Um, One thing, I did the exercise from your book with my husband. You had these 5 questions and 5 invitations, preparing
Yes.
for death life. And it's
Those
so
aren't mine.
interesting.
I mean, those are quoted. I don't, those are somebody else's. Yeah.
But they were just, but I didn't know they existed until I read your book. And it was so fascinating that we realized when we were answering those questions together, from our perspective, we've never talked about that. We never talked about one of us dying and how do we want, what is the thing that we are missing out, or what should we, all of that was so inspirational and actually opened the conversation. Now I know what song he wants in his funeral. I mean, I didn't know
What
this. I
song
would
is it?
have thought of asking this. So, but
My
I think
husband wants Beast of Burden. Don't ask me why.
Oh,
what is
I
that?
love it. Beast
The
of
Rolling
Burden.
Stones, Beast of Burden.
Oh,
Oh wow, I need to write this somewhere. No,
what
I don't
does your
know.
husband want, Basha?
What song does he
Of
want?
course, the Mozart's Requiem.
Uh,
Oh, yeah.
Of course, like
yeah.
so substantial.
Yeah.
But
And what do
Maybe
anyway,
you want?
disco version too. Who knows?
Yeah.
I think it's just so beautiful to start thinking about that and take that, idea of death being end, because in, our yogic culture, that is not an end, right? We are talking about the body being like a clothing, and that there's the reincarnation understanding of that, the moksha, the liberation from cycle of death and birth, all of that stuff, which actually I feel makes it easier to face a loved one's death when you have that kind of a perspective. What do you think about that?
I agree. I mean, I think that it's hard to say what happens, and I purposely didn't really want to go into the idea of what happens afterwards, but everyone thinks, of course, there's the death and then what happens later. And I do think that um I believe in karma, and I believe I have a Buddhist practice, so I'm hoping to be evolved so I don't have to come back, or I can
Yeah.
get evolved as soon as possible so that
Right
We'll
now,
do
I
this
want
again.
enlightenment right now.
yeah.
If you try
So
really hard, it will happen.
I know, I know that I shouldn't say I
There's
know.
a joke that, right?
I
The
know I'm coming
Tibetan,
back. I know I'm not perfect, so
no, there's a joke that the Tibetan guy goes to a monk and says, I really want to be enlightened. What should I do? And, the monk says, you need like a 10 years to full practice. The guy thinks and says, what if I tried really hard and push myself so much? Tibetan monk thinks and says, maybe 20 years. So it's
I
not
love it.
about the effort, right? It's about
Yeah.
effortlessness.
Effortless. Well, there is, I practice a Nichiren Buddhism, which is very action oriented, and like, don't just put it off till late. Like, try to do it now. Like, do it now in this lifetime,
Oh, love it.
because yeah. But I think yeah. I mean, that's a fuzzy
That
question.
makes sense actually, because in your book also you say that first of all you say I'm not everyone's cup of tea, which I disagree. And
Yeah.
then you say
I'm
you
not.
tell your
No, she's not everyone's cup of tea, I have to say.
I'm not. None of us.
None of us are. None of us are.
but the fact that you tell your students that put your 100% into everything, this could be your last dance to do.
Yeah.
I find that so incredibly wonderful motto for life.
Yeah. They get a little freaked. It's a not for everyone. Sometimes they're like, what? And I'm like, I remember I was like, you don't know, you might get hit by a bus on the way home tonight. And then I was like, maybe I shouldn't have said that. That was a little bit much. Like,
Yeah.
they're only 12.
Yeah.
Not everyone is like me.
Yeah.
But there is an aspect to these 5 questions and this idea of you know, do you, you know, it's hard to live every life every day as though it's your last day. I did have a taste of that with my dying husband, where I was like, it could be 6 months, it ended up being 2 years. Kate, you were with me for part of that time. You know, it's a roller coaster, right? But it did give me a glimpse into this idea of like living. Like we really lived. We traveled as much as we could in this brief amount of time. And yeah, we didn't just like tuck in and wait for death. I mean, we were only 22.
Yeah. I mean, that's
And
unbelievable.
but the thing is, like, you know, you can't live every day. You can't live every day, but there are times when things get under my skin and somebody's being mean or, you know, hurting my little feelings. And I'm just like, oh. And then I remember just saying to myself, okay, if this is your last day on earth, is this how you want to be? Do you
Wow.
want to be obsessed about what this person thinks of you? And it really helps me. It
Yeah.
really helps me. It's a heightened feeling, and it's not always good to feel like I could die any second. You know what I mean? And it's not always, even though we could die any, you know what I mean? It's
Yes,
it's
yes. It's
about,
not healthy to be living in that sort of fight and flight,
yeah.
right? You don't
But
need, yeah.
it did sort of center me in that moment of, no, this is not how I want to spend my last hours obsessing about somebody's feelings about me when it's just not. Like, I'm gonna really smell the roses on this most beautiful day.
We only have like another 5 minutes left. I'm so sorry to be
I
telling you because
know,
there's just so much more to
I know,
discuss.
I know.
It's a
But
big subject.
it's a huge subject, and so let's talk about what's going on now, Sally. And you're like, so what is next for you, and like, what are you working on in terms of this project going forward? Um, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I am I'm brewing something. I want to do a site-based dance in a cemetery because I
beautiful.
think they're so beautiful.
They
I
are.
also, it's tricky because you want to be really respectful of what's going on in a cemetery, but I think that they're really, really beautiful. It just I think that I don't know how to talk about something that doesn't have a deadline yet. So I'll just say I'm something that hopefully can show up in any space.
Yeah.
So it has to be really like a formula in a way that could be enacted for anybody. I also want to get back to these death aliveness cafes because they really are important right now, and I really do get a lot of juice from them. And it's an interesting way to be connected with people, is to really talk about these things. And um, it helps me to learn how to facilitate more and more. Um, so those two things I'm working on specific to this deaf thing. Um
Would you ever do those cafes via Zoom so that people could join that are not just,
yeah,
yeah,
that's
it's
a
kind
good
of a good
idea. I haven't
idea.
done it yet. A lot of people have asked, and I haven't done that yet, but that would be really good.
Yeah.
I'm also really interested, I guess a third thing would be something maybe called death literacy or death planning. So not the financial and the will and that
Yes.
sort of admin, although I think that we could find a way to make that fun. Like if we just sat, like putting it off, like just sit down and do it, and finding a way to do that in a fun way, or,
Yeah.
we're all
The
going to do this
easier
today,
way. Yeah.
right? So I think that would be something that might come out of these death aliveness cafes, is let's do this one thing. And it won't be the eulogy, like let's write our eulogy, because that is kind of performative and whatever, but something kind of more practical, you know, up about making choices, like the song, like what do you want to have happen to your body?
Yes.
Do you want cremation? Do you want this human composting terra
Right.
something? Do you
So
want
almost like questions that you could had like a sheet with
Yeah.
all these things that you answered.
Yes. Like a
Yeah.
little death binder, like we'd be like,
Yes.
we'll fill it out together, or, we can have some homework, or we could do, yeah. So like pick one thing that's, we do, and we sort of go through this, and at the end of 5 weeks, we have our death binder
Yeah.
completed. Not to mention all the technical stuff of like making sure utilities have your, everybody's the right name on it, and
I
all that stuff.
know. I know. Passwords. People
Yes.
know how to, yeah, it's like, it's
Yeah.
crazy once you start to think of it all.
Right. And
Yeah.
and these are sort of like tasks, right? But finding a way to make that not so onerous, that would be kind of a third ball in the air to juggle. But I think that could happen, and I think that's a good idea to create a Zoom version of Death Aliveness cafes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't prepare enough for death. And then, even though we know it's inevitable, we're always shocked when it happens. And
Yeah.
then we live up to our loved ones, our children, to handle everything for us. So it's a lot of burden also, right? To try to prepare something that everybody to agree on. And yeah, why not? You say what your piece is, what you
Yeah.
need.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's like looming. So why don't we just deal with it and then go have fun? Like
Yes.
Love that.
then
Go ahead.
then the rest of then go live. Just like get that big cloud of duty that you have to, like a job that you have to do to plan, have that sort of formulated, and then put it away and go live. You don't have to worry so much.
It's such a, now, if people wanted to get in touch with you with these Death Aliveness cafes, is there a website, or should we send it like we could put the info in later as we post this?
I just have my website. So
Okay,
I think there's a way to get in touch with me that way.
okay.
I just started it, so I don't think anyone's ever gotten in touch with me.
But
I
maybe they
hope
will though, after this.
Yeah,
Okay.
find me.
All
Find
right.
me. Yeah. I usually, reach out through Instagram or Facebook if I'm having one. And it needs to be not more than 8 people. So sometimes I have to
Yes. Close the door.
close the door, because that's a lot of people. That's a lot,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah. Dealing with a lot of emotions and everything.
Yeah, I think a smaller amount would be 5 would be perfect, actually. But in person, it's different because we do have we do go off and to our own spaces and write and do things. But yeah, you can, it's just sallyrousse.org is my
Okay.
website, my
Okay.
name,
All
with
right.
2
Okay.
S's.
We'll post it as we are posting this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. I just wanted to say there's a quote that I found from Woody Allen, and he goes, "It's not that I'm afraid to die. I just don't want to be there when it happens."
Yes, there are a lot of good quotes.
Yes, there are.
Yeah, there is.
There are. That made me
Yeah,
chuckle.
I think Mark Twain has a good one, like the rumors of my death are greatly exaggerated.
Yes, that's classic. Yeah, that's a really good one. Well, thank you, my dear friend, for joining us. And we could have gone on and on about this, but it's so interesting, so fascinating. And I can't wait to see what you come up with next. And we're going to keep tuned.
Thank you
Thank
for
you so
having
much.
me. Thank you so much. It's so good to meet you.
You
So I'm
too,
going
as
to,
well, Sally. Kate, do we have an homework?
oh, yes, I forgot. Oh my gosh. Well, I think the homework is,
Read her book.
well, yes. Wait, Sally, don't go.
Oh,
Stay,
sorry.
stay. Yes, and stay when we end so we can have a little thing. But so the homework is going to be, I actually would want to be part of one of your cafes if you ever did that online. But I actually think my mother is 85 and there's some issues and we haven't talked in detail. And I think I need to have that conversation. So that's going to be my own work. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know how I can do that yet with my mother. But I have to think about that. But yeah, I started with my husband, so that's a good one.
You can blame it on me. You can say,
That's right.
it's
It's
not
true.
coming
I
from
have
your
a
mom,
homework.
coming from this lady.
Lady.
Maybe. But also, I think the other thing that really inspired me is, That doesn't have to be something that is full of fear. How can I find, humor in that, in the sense that you said it very, very beautifully, I think in your book, you said use it as not a shield, but a repellent. And that's something that also interesting too, like just take that understanding to life, that every moment can be also moment of life and death. Everything can start and then closes. And then can I then complete every conversation with a loved one? Can I be present in every moment and fully live that moment? And when I leave that moment, I have nothing that I regret about that moment. That's again easier said than done, but having that, understanding of death is imminent. Just remember that, right? It's beautiful.
Yeah,
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. Yeah.
that is.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Let's have a little music and dance our way out.
Sounds good.
Here we go. Bye, Başak.
Bye, Kate. Thank you.
Bye, Sally.